Hello, and welcome to the Vagabond Way Podcast. The journey goes ever on with the long road. This episode, a fantasy dinner party featuring Richard III's horse. The Long Road take a step back from the usual hard-hitting, gritty, real-life journalism that normally graces the airwaves to take up the age-old challenge, the ultimate fantasy dinner party guest list. Find out exactly who would be gracing our table at a Long Road soiree. Steve Bonham talks new songs and old songs, Kev Moore takes on the next steps of his Camino trail, and I talk bread that didn't work. The Vagabond Way podcast, featuring the Long Road, is exploring the world of the troubadour, the adventurer, the vagabond. The world isn't beige, it isn't processed, it's authentic, it's rich, and it's real. And if those are the sorts of sentiments that make your brain light up, then hop on board. We're embracing all of those things, we're celebrating all of that, and we'd love it if you join us on the journey. Greetings, I am Chris the Bish Leiden. Thanks for joining us for a silly episode. It's hit and miss with us sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's serious. Before the hashtag content for this week, we have a new music video out. Following hot on the heels of Washed Away from a few weeks ago, we now have our music video for Something's Gotta Change. It's out there now, filmed at Woodworm Studios whilst we were recording the track itself. Kat Hodgkinson and Gemma Caldwell have done a brilliant job putting this video together, so go check it out. It's on YouTube or on the website, thelongroadband.net. Just search for Something's Gotta Change. Also, don't forget to check out our documentary as well, The Rise of the Artisan, or The Long Road to Now. It's all out there on the website and on YouTube. Anyway, on to today's content. Greetings, the Long Roads are together again for another of our online digital chats via Zoom, the power of the internet these days. We've got Kev, who's at home in Spain. Hello, Kev, how are you?
Totsiens, Bish.
Topsins?
Topsins, yeah.
What? Totsins, interesting. I've got to work out what language that makes. Totsins.
Yeah, I think it's Siens, Totsiens.
I'll have to pass on that one. What language is that?
I believe it's a Belgian of sorts, and it's either hello or goodbye. It's some kind of salutation, anyway.
Some sort of salutation, yeah. Great, Totsiens. Yeah. And we've got Steve, who's at home in Derbyshire. Steve, hello, how are you?
Hey up me duck.
Hey up me duck. Now, we all know what that language is.
Yeah.
The duck bit does confuse some people.
It does.
And it just seems so natural to us from Derbyshire that...
You have the duck in Derbyshire, a bit in Nottinghamshire. Of course, you have hen, which is that Glaswegian? Hen?
Glasgow, yeah.
Glasgow, yeah.
And hinny, which is Geordie. And then you have penguin.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is the Isle of Wight.
Which is a biscuit.
Yeah.
Yes. Delicious biscuit.
Yes.
The Isle of Wight, really?
Yeah, apparently, they call each other, hello, penguin.
I can't really tell if you're being serious or not right now.
I'm pretty sure sure he's not. Yeah, they say hello, penguin, and dance around the statue of Burgess Meredith. Anyway, let's move on.
Let's go on to the prescribed nonsense for today's show, rather than the ad-lib nonsense that we're currently troubling ourselves with. So the prescribed nonsense for today's show is we're going to do the Long Road fantasy dinner party guests. We can each invite one or two or three or however many we like, famous people to our dinner party that we're hosting. The only rule being, essentially, is that person must be dead. We're going to reanimate them and bring them...
Are we allowed to kill them in order to invite them to the party or not?
I think for this round, we're going to say they have to be dead for a long time. Okay. They can't be somebody that we make dead.
My first guest most definitely has been dead for quite a long time now. And I would invite Peter Ustinov.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He was an incredible mind, incredible raconteur, incredible lineage, actually. I think traced back to Russia, if I'm not mistaken. And I just think he'd be the most incredible company.
Kind of the Stephen Fry of his day, wasn't he?
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, his autobiography, Dear Me, is a must-read. If anybody's out there that fancies a good read.
I'm trying to think. What do I mean? I know Peter Ustinov, but what was he most famous for? He's an actor and
he was an actor and a writer, filmmaker, raconteur. He famously
opera director.
Opera director.
Famously played Poirot, and he was pretty good at it, but I would always have to go with David Suchet for Poirot, I'm afraid. But But he was, he played him in several movies, Death on the Nile being one. Mm. But he was just incredibly witty and well read, fantastic.
He sounds like the sort of person that was probably on Just a Minute or something, and I've probably heard old archive episodes.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Like that. Yeah, and would be able to have been talked for a minute on a topic so eloquently and
absolutely flawlessly. Yeah, it would be. It would be Just a Minute gold, in fact. Yes.
Steve, who would one of your guests be?
This is a challenge, isn't it? Richard III's horse would be. Why? Where did you go? Right at the wrong bleeding moment. There you are. The whole course of history would be different if he hadn't made a bolt for it. You've got to explain, haven't you? Yeah. Why?
I just had a flash of the Long Road life, the Long Road universe, where things like this, where there's a horse sat across the table from Peter Ustinov while he gently interrogates it as to where it had got to during the battle.
Demands to know how he let this happen to our royal lineage.
Oh, God. No, seriously. It would be a fascinating one. On a serious level, Elizabeth I would be interesting.
Elizabeth I, okay.
Yes.
Elizabeth I she is a remarkable woman. She spoke 13 languages, apparently.
Really?
Yeah. She was a remarkable lady in all sorts of ways, actually.
What would you ask Queen Elizabeth I if she was at our dinner party? What would be your overriding question?
What do you think of your dad?
Yeah, tell us about your dad.
Tell us about your dad, yeah.
No children say, your daddy's a bit of work, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a piece of work.
Yeah.
What about your sister? Bloody hell.
What a family.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of the EastEnders family.
They'd be on Jerry Springer, wouldn't they?
Wasn't it? It's all nonsense.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that the whole notion of monarchy is nonsense.
Indeed.
There is something about the whole royal idea which is a bit odd.
Well, it's now it's basically now a giant advert for what's wrong with inequality. It's like...
Christopher, you need to tell us who would be your.
Because my immediate thought was some sort of musician, because that's just
roughly what we're supposed to be talking about.
well, I think Richard III's horse has sort of raised the bar a little bit, and I feel like I can offer some more suggestions in that vein. No, my very initial thought was, I've got a few ideas in my head, but my initial thought would be a musician who lived for a lot longer than people did back then,
right.
and saw a change in the world that very few people would have been fortunate enough to see. And this is Haydn, Franz Joseph Haydn. The father of classical music, really. But Haydn was this guy who he was part of and saw the transformation of classical music from the not basic in a diminutive way, but just the sort of fundamentals, how you got started, that Bach left behind. And then Haydn inherited this sort of weird, clunky gift of everything. And he said, right, yes, I'll absorb all of that, and I'm going to give you the next steps, thanks. And in the course of that, he, worked with Mozart and Beethoven and all these other huge, huge names, inspired them. He was around during this incredible time of change in music and in Europe in general. Europe changed a huge amount in that 100 years. He was alive for something like 70 years. I can't remember his exact dates.
That's immense in those days, isn't it? That's immense.
To live to 70 in 1700s was just crazy. But one of his peaking achievements for me was when he told his long-standing boss, basically to get stuffed, because the boss was this sort of petulant man who'd taken the whole court off to his summer house in the countryside. And they were out there for months and months and months and months, and he refused to say when they were going to be going back home, when people could go back to their families. So Haydn wrote possibly one of his most famous pieces of music, which is called the Farewell Symphony, where he was basically giving his boss the message that we should pack up and go home now. I don't know if you know about it, but the idea is that it's written into the score that the musicians snuff out their candles and leave the stage gradually over the course of the last movement.
Oh, I like that.
Where by the time you get to the last few minutes of the piece, there's just 2 musicians left on stage playing, because all the rest of the orchestra have gone home. And the
I've played a few clubs where we've tried to do that. I've started dismantling gear before the end of the set.
I think yes, trying to get some pack down done early.
Yeah.
But I just, just the balls, because back then people were big into things like executing people for saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And Haydn had the sort of almost political foresight. But okay, I have some influence here. I'm a respected man about court. I can make some change. So he made changes for the betterment of not just himself, for everybody. So it'd be fascinated to hear from his point of view, what life would be like.
Indeed.
That's my big contribution to our dinner party. Would be the grandfather of classical music, Haydn.
Excellent.
That's very good.
Some other nonsense ideas, just because he's a big sort of influence and would be a fascinating person to have a conversation with. Terry Pratchett is probably my favourite.
Oh yeah.
And his view of the world and being able to put a view of the world into his fiction books is just second to none. His book about the birth of newspapers in his world, in his Discworld, which is called The Truth, and it's about how a newspaper accidentally is born, and it's just so cutting about how modern media is. It's a beast that just needs feeding, and it's hungry for its own nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's just a brilliant...
Good writer. I've tried to stay clear of musicians, really. I would... Salvador Dali would be a tremendous guest. I'd love to see how his mind worked. But musician-wise, I would probably go with the likes of Tommy Bolin and just sort of to ask why he was on such a self-destructive... sort of path, and when he was just coming into his prime as a guitarist with Deep Purple, and what he might have created in later years. Sadly, there are many of those.
So what does our lineup look like so far? So we've got Peter Ustinov, we've got Richard III's horse,
yes,
we've got Elizabeth I,
yes,
Haydn,
Salvador Dali,
and Salvador Dali, Terry Pratchett. That's quite a mix, isn't it?
Quite a mix.
Yes.
Steve, I feel like you've got somebody else bubbling away in your brain.
I was realising that it was quite male-dominated.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. I suppose you could say, when you talk about Peter Ustinov, another is Helen Mirren, who had, a similar Russian ancestry, I believe.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, she did.
Which would be interesting. Very controversially, brace yourself, Kev.
Go on.
Brace yourself. Taylor Swift.
Yes.
I find is a very interesting lady. I know music.
I've got a lot of time for
cleverer than I thought. She's a very principled, very strong person. So
totally agree.
I would probably sit her alongside somebody like Ustinov, not near the horse.
Yeah.
So I think that wouldn't be pleasant for her. But she's a very interesting lady. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't have her because she's not dead.
We'd have to break our rule. We'd have to murder her to allow her to come to this. I mean, we can have another dinner party later on where we can have live people. We can have a live people. But this first one, this was just.
Who's the? So I don't know. It would be really interesting.
Can't come.
Who was the jazz singer, black jazz singer, who went to Paris in the 20s and 30s? What story she would have? Here we go again. If you say Pete Seeger. Well, so that belongs to last week.
It's not Billie Holiday, then, is it? She didn't go to Paris, did she?
In the 20s?
In the 20s and 30s, yeah. She was a real character. American female jazz singer who went...
Josephine Baker?
That's the one.
Josephine Baker, yeah.
Yeah, she would be fascinating.
To be honest, I mean, in a similar vein to Kev would welcome any... guitarist from a rock band from anywhere from the 60s onwards, that I would welcome a sit down with just about any jazz musician from
the era,
the 30s onwards, because they just the world that they were all living in, just absolutely, it's so different to where we are today.
That would be fascinating, an unending conversation.
We should do that. Maybe we should do that one week. One week we should design
have a séance.
The perfect rock group and the perfect jazz group.
What do you call that? Not a mega mix. When you have a super group. That's what it is.
Yeah.
A super group. We'll do that. We'll make our rock supergroup and a jazz supergroup one day.
I've been writing songs this week, which is a bit of a nuisance, actually. It's like they're like sneezes sometimes. They come upon you at the most inopportune moment, and then you start, and anyway, you can't finish them. And this week was not a good week to be writing songs, but there you are. They're there in front of you, or winking out the corner of their eyes, saying, "Come on, boy, get on with it." Flirty little things. Anyway, I will write them, and I wrote one, and I foolishly tried to play it last night on an online concert, and staggered through to the end. I think it's quite a good one, actually, when I've had time to pull it all together. And then I was thinking that, what am I going to do with these songs? Some of these songs are not long road specials. And over the last few recording sessions, in the corners of the hours at the end of each day, I have recorded now 7 songs because they're there. And a couple of times Chris or Kev has kindly put a little bit of piano or bass or guitar on it. What are they for? Somebody asked. That's a good question. Are you one of those people who start something without quite knowing why, and then gradually realise that some kind of hidden impulse is driving you into it? That's probably not a bad artistic approach. I suspect something someone like David Bowie often tried. Anyway, these songs have come into existence, and now I discover I've done 7. And I've got 3 more hanging around, waiting for next time I'm down there. And there you are. An album. I wasn't quite sure whether I intended to do an album. I don't recall this, but this, as my friends will tell you, has happened before. We once went into the studios to record an EP and left with 2 albums a year later. If I release this lot as an album, I'm going to call it the album Standing Stones, I think. Those big megalithic lumps you find in the earth all over Western Europe. There. Certainly there. But nobody really knows why. Arranged in a pattern in the ground. For what? Yeah, I think Standing Stones would be a great title. Anyway, the other week I was down in the studio, and whilst Kev was in UK, and we fiddled with some. I thought you might like to hear a version of it today. Now, no one's heard this before, and this is not mixed. I mean, in fact, dear Stuart down in the studio would be appalled that this is going to go out on the internet. He would call this a desk mix or something like that. Monitor mix, that's what he'd call it, meaning please don't play this in public. But he's down there and I'm up here, so here we go, warts and all. The song is Sister of a Dirty Moon, which I recently started playing again. I was amused, intrigued to find I'd written it in 2003, which makes it an old song. I remember at the time one reviewer kindly called it a 1960s Technicolor love story in a 3.5-minute song. That'll do me. But it's my attempt to capture that most evocative of feelings, a street cafe on the Mediterranean, North Africa, as the scent and colours and sounds of the centuries pass you by, and somewhere a man waits for a woman. He was a man with a hat on the up escalator when she passed him going down. The angels sang train whistle glory, Lady took up the tune. She put her head to one side and said, I'll see you later, under the roofs of the Spanish town.
You're the brother, sunburned sky, I'm the sister of a dirty moon. You're the brother of a sunburned sky, I'm the sister of a dirty moon. In the old quarter, under eucalyptus trees, trying to keep his cool, chewing the sunflower seeds, sipping on a jar of wine, waiting for a fall. She said she'd see him later by the Moorish wall. Cricket sang and the apples pulled lower, it's a cracked serenade. She said it's too damned hot to be making love in the afternoon. When the sky turns to purple, it's then I'll look it over and I'll take it to my big brass bed. You're the brother of a summer sky, I'm the sister of a dirty moon. You're the brother of a summer sky, I'm the sister of a dirty moon. In the old quarter, under eucalyptus trees, trying to keep his cool, chewing sunflower seeds, sipping on a jar of wine, waiting for a fall. She said she'd see him later by the Moorish wall. Torn dress on the bed, warm body in the window, silhouetted by the lamp outside. She's listening to the sound from the river, echo in the moonshine room. There's a song that is playing in the street down below. There's a man sleeping on his side. He's the brother of a sunburned sky, she's the sister of a dirty moon. He's the brother of a sunburned sky, she's the sister of a dirty moon. In the old quarter, under eucalyptus trees, trying to keep his cool, chewing sunflower seeds, sipping on a jar of wine, waiting for a fall. She said she'd see him later by the Moorish wall. She's the sister of a dirty, sister of a dirty moon, sister of a dirty, sister of a dirty
Hello everyone and welcome once again to that fuzzy warm place called Kev's Cafe Corner. Last week you left me finally heading out of Navia after leaving my trusty staff behind and having to go back for it. It was now Monday, October the 19th, and I'd walked for about 2 hours and stopped in La Carrida to buy some fruit, and I'd eaten it during my 10-minute break. All being well, today would be my last day in Asturias. I eased my rucksack back onto my shoulders and set out to find the coastal path, which doubles as the Camino. As the day progressed, I discovered the dual way that Aurelio had mentioned. Remember him? He was the guy who ran the hostel, who I'd awakened at some ungodly hour to let me back in to retrieve my staff. Although this dual way afforded me some incredible views, it was probably a mistake to take it, and certainly led to me doing far more than 33 kilometres that day. I silently cursed Aurelio, but nevertheless enjoyed strange green lagoons in the deep forest and weird modern art sculptures in the middle of nowhere, utterly surreal. I also accidentally wandered into a farm at milking time, all very cool experiences, but I was starting to suffer. I finally found a chair that was part of a modern art piece. I sat down in it and a guy took my photo. I am become art. I estimated that I'd walk for around 9.5 hours in total, a punishing schedule. I intended to eat at some point and found a cafe, but their meals were expensive, so I contented myself with a slice of tortilla. I finally crossed the Rio de Ribadeo as the night began to draw its veil across the sky. I'd completed my trek across the whole of the province of Asturias and entered Galicia, accompanied by my old friends the wind and the rain. On the maps, it was hard to tell if it was possible to cross the road bridge on foot, but there was in fact a small metal gantry that ran alongside it, the footpath being a see-through metal grating, not for the faint-hearted. When I finally arrived at the hostel, mercifully just over the bridge, I could barely stand up. Rebecca had arrived and high-fived me, but she was now without her bike. It had got a puncture and she'd given it away. At the rate she was losing stuff, she'd be walking into Santiago in a bikini. There were 2 French cyclists there too. Everyone else had plans to head onwards tomorrow, but I'd decided to take a rest day. I picked my bunk and began my evening routine, airing clothes, rearranging the rucksack, etc. I lay down and thought about my trek across Asturias and beyond. I don't think there's a better way to appreciate a region than to get your boots on the ground, get dirty, smell the air, and marvel at its beauty as you walk through it. It's a region that will remain very special to me. In the middle of it, in the depths of my Camino, I'd finally found who I was after stripping away the layers, and the comfort of that knowledge will serve me well for the rest of my life. Next week, out and about, exploring Ribadeo and the hunt for churros. See you next time.
Quick entry this week, as time is against me somewhat, but my Bishop's Daily Bread this week is once again about bread. Praise be. Now, I saw an Instagram story for a baker off the telly who did a loaf, and I thought I'd give it a crack. So this was a tiger loaf. So just a normal loaf, I think, with a crust that goes on just before baking that gives you a sort of crunchy, crispy outer layer. Now, they said to use rice flour for this outer glaze. Apparently, the lack of gluten is what gives you the sort of crackled effect. As the bread inside rises and stretches because of the gluten, the glaze doesn't stretch, so it cracks, the desired effect. Now, it turns out getting hold of rice flour in the supermarkets near me was impossible for some reason. I didn't think it would be a hassle, but apparently it is. So I looked on the internet. The internet said you could try corn flour. That might work instead, or that would work instead. So I tried that. It did not work. It was a perfectly nice loaf. There was just nothing tiger about it. It was nice and big, though, and I swear I can't see the differences sometimes between these bread recipes. 500 grams of flour and 300 ml of water-ish. And just sometimes they turn out much bigger than other ones. I don't get it. Anyway, I don't think I've got it in me to order, a 5 kilogram bag of rice flour from the internet just to get the 2 tablespoons of rice flour I need to try tiger bread again. So I'll just have to keep out for the rice flour in a supermarket. But don't fear, one day tiger bread will be mine. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening wherever in the world you are. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and now YouTube as well. The next episode will be out next Friday. Join us on YouTube for the Transatlantic Connection show and become part of the Transatlantic Connection movement. Head to youtube.com/thelongroadband. If you fancy buying us a coffee, you now can at buymeacoffee.com/thelongroadband. It's dead simple to just drop us a few quid to support what we do. It even accepts Apple Pay and Google Pay. Super easy. All of our music and merch is on Bandcamp, where you can help support a positive ecosystem for the music industry. Downloads, streaming, vinyls, CDs, the companion book, it's all there. thelongroadband.bandcamp.com. We're on Patreon at patreon.com/thevagabondway. Big thank you to our Patreons and a special shout out to Orla Flynn, James Lydon, Stuart Lydon, Yvette Lydon and Trish Taylor. Thank you for your ongoing support. If you'd like to support us, become a Vagabonder. You'll get free digital stuff and merchandise in the post if you want it. Help us create something different, something that entertains and something that inspires others. So join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/thevagabondway. Thank you once again, brave adventurers, vagabonds and explorers, for joining us on the Vagabond Way. Remember, the world isn't beige. It's authentic, it's rich, and it's real. Embrace every last bit of it. Until next time, the journey goes ever on with The Long Road. Bye for now.